Spirit Airlines, this judge blocked Spirit's merger with JetBlue, and maybe that sends Spirit into bankruptcy. We'll talk about that on the Rebel's Edge right after this. Bang. Still over here in Andorra, which I'm guessing a lot of you have never heard of. It is a very small principality in between Spain and France, and they have some great skiing. It is also a tax-free zone. And we've had a fun time over here with the Interbourse crowd, which is exchanges and people that are traders and or that run exchanges, and now a lot of fintech people that descend once a year for skiing and then once a year for golf. And this is obviously the time of year for skiing. Pete, it's been pretty special.
I bet. And you know what? I guess they lost my invitation. I'm not really sure how this whole thing works, because I'm sitting here and you're sitting there, and it looks like you're sitting in a pretty damn good spot. I'm getting jealous.
Well, you should be, Pete. But all of you are still going to get the Rebel's Edge, which is basically macro minute, fantastic futures for stocks that Pete and I are watching and trading today, and then a little sports. Let's start off with, Pete, the macro minute. Macro minute, Microsoft topping Apple in market cap. I remember, Pete, when a certain person at Goldman was saying it wasn't a buy in the mid-20s. And now here it is, topping Apple in market capitalization, pushing to $3 trillion. Yeah, you heard that right, folks. And Apple also ended Samsung's 12-year run as the largest seller of smartphones. Now Apple has caught up and passed them, Pete. So those two bits, that's my macro minute.
Yeah, and that is well-deserved. In Microsoft, we've talked about Satya Nadella. He was the right man. I still remember back, John, when there was a lot of folks out there who thought the former Ford CEO, because he'd know a lot about that whole thing, that would make a lot of sense for Microsoft, right? Anyway, they didn't go that route. They came from within, and Satya Nadella has done an absolutely spectacular job for Microsoft. For my macro minute, John, I'm just looking at what's going on right now with those home builders and that sentiment. It's still not great. It's still under 50, but it was up about 7 points. So it's sitting up there at 44. And why is that? Well, a lot of that has to do with what we're seeing with mortgage rates. They were 8%. Now we're looking at closer to 6%. We're talking about from October until now. I think that is definitely the reason why we are seeing the kind of spike that we are seeing. And I would expect it to continue and maybe get a little bit better, and get over that 50 mark at sometime in the not too distant future.
Well, it certainly could, Pete, and it would tie right into today's fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
And a lot of people, of course, bet a pretty good buck, Pete, on the Fed making cuts in 2024. I think they will, but the timing of it is going to be everything, because initially the bets were that, hey, maybe even by March we'll start seeing cuts. That has flipped around a lot, Pete. So now we're seeing that down to a 59% chance that maybe the Fed cuts by then. In other words, it's not a lock. They think maybe it stretches out much further into the future in 2024.
And that makes total sense to me, John. The fact that everybody jumped the gun and suddenly everybody was moving into that, hey, we're going to get 6 cuts this next year. Well, maybe, but there's probably a better chance of maybe not. And I think that's the camp that you and I are in. And we've watched how this number has gone in terms of March and what they're going to do. And it's been dropping at a pretty, the pace has been very, very interesting to watch. So it's getting closer to 50-50. And that makes it pretty interesting. And a lot of people will be focused very closely on that. For me, John, the macro minute is this, the fantastic futures is this: volatility. We talk about it all the time, but you look at the VIX today, it got up and over that 15 mark. It got 1537 for the high, at least so far on the day. Might get there again. Unlikely, in my opinion. But we're talking about something that was sitting at 12 just a month ago. So it's been steadily kind of chopping wood and moving a little bit higher. And it just shows you there's a little bit of a nervousness, I think, around the markets. Are they scared? I don't think so. We're still under 16 and so forth. But there is something to be said about the volatility index, and it's been creeping up. So keep an eye on that, folks.
Always a good idea because that is the cost of insurance, folks. When the VIX is going up, the cost of insuring your stock portfolio has been going up. All right, let's talk about Rumble, Pete. It was up almost 8% early on. A lot of people noted that Donald Trump's blowout victory in Iowa might have been one of the reasons, because he was, through many of his social posts, pushing people over to Rumble. So naturally, it was up pretty strong. Well, it has pulled back, and now it is down 6% so far today, Pete. So that's a big turnaround for Rumble, a big competitor to YouTube.
Yeah, let's get ready to rumble. I'll tell you, John, it's interesting to watch how this thing has played out. And this is a stock that you go back in January of last year. This is a stock that was trading around $10. Here we are now in the threes, but it did get that pop initially. And a lot of that obviously attributed to the conservative side and Trump and everything else. Whether you're political or not, doesn't really matter. The fact is the fact. And it did get that pop. Now we're seeing a little bit of a drop. And it's interesting to watch. You know, there is a cash burn for this company, but I think at least for right now, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it would be something I would be keeping an eye on as it goes, because it's been very difficult to predict exactly where this thing's going, but it doesn't seem to be able to hold on to some of those gains, John. And that kind of scares me. And that tells me a little something about the cash burn and some of the folks and what people really think about this stock right now and how long can they really last. They can last a while, but the problem is they just are going to start burning more and more of those funds that they've got, and that makes it a little bit more difficult.
Well, it's worth paying attention to always, Pete. And I think right now, a lot of people are definitely focused in on the fact that these guys are in a little bit of a rough spot because you've got letter X, which is Twitter, of course, coming after them. You've got YouTube, which is the gorilla, the 800-pound gorilla. So we're going to keep our eye on RUM shares, but they needed a breakout to the upside, not a breakdown. All right, talk about Spirit Airlines. Yesterday, down 46%, maybe 47%, Pete. Today, it started off down, and it's just gotten worse. Why? Well, because a number of analysts, Pete, in fact, TD Cowen's analyst was pretty much spot on when he said, you know what, if they can't do a merger with JetBlue and they won't perhaps let them merge with another airline, they might need to get saved from bankruptcy. What do you think, Pete?
Yeah, I would say they're getting awfully close to that spot, John. It's obviously something that they thought was a slam dunk. They figured, hey, this is going to happen, $3.8 billion, the whole deal. But you look at the debt, you look at now based on things and what the judges ruled, but you look at it now and you look at that debt, you look at the cash burn that they're facing right now. This is a company that's really got some trouble in front of them. And like you said, it was down, 40 some odd percent. Now it's down an additional 20%. 48 million shares were trading, John, just in the first 2 hours of the day. It averages a little closer to 6.5 million shares in a full day. So there is a lot of folks that are getting out of there. I'd also add to that, the shorts are doing pretty well here. At what point do they decide to maybe start closing that up? It's about 17% of what we're looking at right here on the outstanding, that we're looking at about 17% shorts. That's a great short. But how long do they want to hold on to that, and when do they start to cover? That'll be interesting to watch as well.
Yeah, because lately, how many of these M&A mergers and acquisitions have we heard blocked? Not many. And so the fact that they're blocking this one, I'm surprised they're 17% short interest, Pete. But again, hats off to those guys that did that. They were smart traders. let's talk about Chinese EVs, Pete. So that would be Li Motors, LI. That would be XPEV and a host of others. Chinese electrical vehicles are not moving out of the showrooms as fast as necessary. What is necessary? Well, they've got a cash burn, just like whether you're in a capitalist society or a communist society. It costs you more and more when those vehicles are not being sold and instead are just sitting in a lot. Well, that's what's happening over there, Pete. And so these Chinese EV makers, Bernstein was warning, and a host of other things. I think this is a difficult spot to invest in right now.
Really difficult because of the fact, like you said, John, there's just stacking up with these vehicles, and people are unwilling to step up and pay a little bit more to go to the EV route. And because of that, it just keeps building and building and building. And that's something that's going to be a problem. How about this? Another problem. Tesla comes out and says, you know what? We're going to start cutting our prices over in China. That's not going to be pretty either, John, because we're already talking about prices and profitability and all the rest of that. And that's going to have to force some of the Chinese makers as well to say, you know what? If Tesla's doing it, we've got to match them. That's not going to be good going forward. So we might see those stacks start to come out a little bit, but what are they going to be making on some of these cars? And that's going to be the problem as well. So I don't know. Right now, the EV space is definitely in a spot where it's very, very difficult, including Tesla, but it's very difficult to get these things moving. At some point, I think they will. I think they'll find the right price part. But right now, it's still been a little bit too high.
Yes, and it doesn't help when areas like Chicago that are very cold right now are experiencing long delays in charging vehicles. I'm not dancing on their grave, Pete. I'm just saying that is not good publicity for any EV. It might be decent publicity for the hydrogen makers of clean vehicles, but not for electric, which is mainly basically lithium-ion batteries. All right, let's talk about one more. This one, Pete, Natera, NTRA, moving to the upside, which is good. They're a leader in cell-free DNA testing. And they announced that a jury verdict in the U.S. basically regarding a so-called patent infringement brought by Ravgen against them. The judge basically said, nah, this is not a significant borrowing of their intellectual property or stealing of it. And in fact, they wanted 400 mil. We're only going to give them 50 mil. So that's a win for Natera and a big loss for Ravgen.
Huge win, John. Huge win. As a matter of fact, the stock hit 52-week highs on that, based on that whole thing. So really a nice spike for them. I don't know enough of the details to know whether or not it was the right decision by the judge or not, but certainly it's the way it all got moved around, and it's interesting to see. By the way, they are looking to be, they say they're going to be free cash flow positive in the not too distant future. So that's something that a lot of folks, I think, are pretty excited about as well. Obviously, this ruling and this number from, like you said, 400 million to 50 million, it's a pretty big jump. That gives them a little bit of something to move to the upside, and that's why that stock hit over $68 a share today. A lot of turnover here as well. But I'll tell you, John, it's very, very interesting to see these diagnostic companies, and this is one of them. They are not too far away, this particular name, not that far away from getting themselves into that profitable area. And that's what we're looking for. That's what you want to see out of these companies, whether it's biotech or diagnostics or whatever in the healthcare industry. This is something that I think is absolutely a feather in their cap going forward. And the fact that they didn't get accused of as much damage, at least, as they were expected, certainly good for the stock today. There's no doubt.
Yeah. And congratulations to any of the patient shareholders who have held on to it. All right. Pete, let's talk a little bit about Red Zone Sports. I know we had some visits by some coaches as well as a lot of betting news out right now. What do you have that you're focused on?
Well, I think the cool thing about it, John, is when we look at college football and the NFL, and then you start looking right at Jim Harbaugh. And what is he going to do? Is he going to stay at Michigan? We don't really know the answer to that, but we do know this. He has sat down with the LA Chargers. He's also now recently sat down with the Atlanta Falcons. And I guess the way I'd pitch it to you, John, is if you are Jim and you decide you're going to leave Michigan, and by the way, he's been negotiating with Michigan as well. Very interesting what he's asking for if he's going to stay there. It's incredible, actually, about how they can't fire him and all the rest of it. But we'll see how that whole thing all plays out. But if you were he, do you go to Atlanta with Desmond Ridder as your quarterback, or do you go to San Diego? And I think you and I have the same answer to that one. We like the quarterback. We like the team. They got a great offensive line. They've got good receivers, very good receivers. They've got a really good running back in Eckler as well. The only thing that concerns me at all about the Chargers, they're getting kind of old on defense. Now, they're still playing well, but as you start getting into your 30s, and they've got quite a few players on the team that are in their 30s on the defensive side of the ball, it just makes you wonder, are they going to be able to keep up? And they obviously only won 5 games this last year, which is why the coaching job is open. But what do you think, John? Would you go with the Chargers, or would you go maybe with Atlanta because of the fact they've got Bijan Robinson, that running back from Texas, who's unbelievable. He had a great rookie year. They've got a lot of pieces. They don't have a quarterback, in my opinion, but they do have a lot of pieces right now in Atlanta.
They do, but if I'm Jim, Pete, I'm thinking just like you are. I think that he isn't 72 like Saban, like Belichick, or like Pete Carroll. He's not 72. But do you want to tie your future to a team that has perennially not done that well in the draft? Yes, they went to the Super Bowl and they had a 28-7 lead over the New England Patriots, and then Tom Brady brought him back, and the rest is history. But outside of that, Arthur Blank, who's one of the co-founders of Home Depot, he's got all the cheddar you need to get a guy like Harbaugh. But does he have the players and the team, Pete? So to your point, even though the defense is older, I think it might be more of a temptation to go out with just Justin Herbert out in San Diego. So that would be, if it were me, Pete, which it's not, that would be more likely where I would go.
Makes sense to me. I mean, Justin Herbert, I think, is truly one of the best quarterbacks in football, but he doesn't always get to show it because of the fact of how they've actually used him over the last couple of years. They've had some great moments for sure. And the Chargers, I think, are a team that's right on the verge of being a team that could be really great and be one of those with Buffalo and with Kansas City and some of the rest. But they haven't gotten there because of probably some of the coaching and some of the decisions and some of the drafts and everything else. But I think the core team itself, other than age, I think that's a team that has really incredible potential. So that's why I would probably stick with the Chargers, and, the beautiful SoFi Stadium that they share with the Rams is pretty unbelievable. All right, John, how about this?
All right. And Pete, by the way, he could, if you're selling out that stadium, you can move it all the way up to almost 100,000. So it's very similar to what you and I talked about with Ohani. Because if you could put, for instance, 90,000 in there, maybe, 20,000 or even close to 30,000 more than they regularly do, you could afford anything. And then, by the way, Pete, I think you got to take a look at this video that I sent you of our friend Josh Allen, because you want to see a beast. This is the beast. And for this reason, Pete, my money would be on the Bills. Take a look at this play, folks.
Josh steps up, and he's going to get the first down.
I like that. He almost slid, and then he decided, you know what? I'm not going to slide. Well, the thing about him,
yard run right up the gut.
That's who Josh Allen is, though. And you and I have talked about him many, many times, but he's as big as a tight end. He can run as good as a running back, and he's got that great arm. So the combination, as long as he's not throwing that ball away, which every once in a while he gets into that little circle where he's throwing interceptions, but when he's not doing that, he's one of the most dominant quarterbacks in all of football. I mean, he's absolutely incredible, still relatively young. He's got the big contract like every one of these quarterbacks got, but he doesn't care. I think the guy truly just loves the game and really enjoys it, and he's part of the team. and part of that city. So they absolutely love him. They've embraced him. All right, John, a couple of upsets that I'm going to throw out there to you for the playoffs, and I just want to hear what you think here. How about the Bucks and the Lions? Can the Bucks sort of shock the Lions, who've been, everybody's pick in the preseason? Even a lot of people like the Lions for all the right reasons. They were right. And I like Goff. I love the coach. I think they've got a lot of pieces. Defense maybe is one of them that they're lacking a little bit right now. But Baker Mayfield, I think he just is on a mission, John. And the way that they played in the very last part of this, season going into the playoffs, and then all of a sudden making Philadelphia look like a team that shouldn't have even been in the playoffs. I think the Bucks got a shot. What do you think on that one? And then we got one more. But upset alert, I think that it is an upset alert, and I think Tampa might get them.
Well, Pete, as you know, being a guy that follows not just sports but the betting lines, the Lions are 5-4 against the spread at home. So that's not good. In other words, they don't really have a huge home field advantage, at least during against the spread, Pete. They might have it in overall win, but, which is different. You go with the money line or whatever. Or if you're betting the odds, that's like a coin toss. Nobody wants to do a coin toss on a bet like that. So Baker Mayfield playing indoors, not playing outdoors, playing indoors, I think could be one of the favorites to get them to the NFC divisional championship game. So we'll have to see. But I love your coach that you always identify, Pete, with the Lions. But I think Mayfield could have their number.
Yep. It could be interesting because of the fact that, defensively, that's been one of the weaknesses for Detroit, at least for at least certain games this past year. And if Baker Mayfield gets rolling like he did against Philly, and not throwing interceptions, and that's the key. Here's another guy who all of a sudden figured out if you don't throw interceptions, your team has a good shot. How about this one? San Francisco, we know how good they are. They've got all the pieces to the puzzle that you'd ever want. We've talked about it all year. We had 3 different guys that we think could have been the MVP of the NFL, literally the quarterback, the receiver, the running back. Not such a bad trio you've got over there. But can the Green Bay Packers maybe surprise them if they play anything like they did against Dallas, John? Dallas had a great defense all year, right? Micah Parsons, probably the best linebacker in football right now. He's the closest thing. I'm not going to say he's LT, but he's the closest thing to Lawrence Taylor that we've seen in a really long time. He's tenacious, unbelievable, and the defense generally has been really, really stout. Well, they did give up, 48 points to the Packers? So maybe Jordan Love, as I've said, really has stepped up to the plate. Can he do it again, though? Can he step up again and do it against San Francisco? Because if he just did it against Dallas, is it going to be much different against San Francisco, John? Can the offense keep up with San Francisco's offense?
My answer is no. I think, Pete, you got to go with San Francisco here. I love Jordan Love and Sterling. I know you're watching. Sterling is a big fan of the show, Pete. And I know that she loves her Packers. But I got to think that the dual threat on the outside rush from, Young and Bosa is going to be more than enough to contain Love so he doesn't get to scramble and make a couple guys miss, because those guys literally, Pete, do not miss. Can he get outside the pocket if somebody makes a mistake? Sure. If Armstead doesn't hold the middle, yeah, he could get outside the pocket, because he's going to try to do, Pete, the same thing that Josh Allen did in that clip. He's with the 2 outside guys coming hard on the outside. You've got to have a strong middle, or he's going to just shake and bake up the middle, and that'll give them fits. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's San Francisco going to the division playoffs against the Bucks.
Yeah, that would be fun. It would be fun for me, and I think you're probably right. I threw it out there just because the Packers played so well, and their offense played so well. I was just shocked. Defense did not play well, by the way. The defense, I'll tell you what people are missing about that game is there was a couple of turnovers that really forced the game into something that was a blowout, but that offense put up 500 yards on the Packers. So it's not like Dallas just laid over and said, hey, we're done. They gave it a shot. They just couldn't get there. The numbers started going against them. But I'll tell you, Jordan Love, hats off to him, really has played well. And I think you're right. I think San Francisco is just a little too good for Green Bay right now, but maybe they're not that far away anymore.
I would say they're not that far away. So we'll see. I'm calling for Pete, San Francisco against the Bucs in the NFC. Tomorrow, you and I will have to give them what our picks are for the AFC.
Yep. Sounds good. I like it. I like it because it's going to be fun. There's a lot. Hey, man, the AFC is interesting. I mean, Houston and Baltimore, everybody's going to say Baltimore. Houston has a shot. I'm telling you right now, that's just a prelim for tomorrow.
All right. Well, folks, another prelim. Make sure you check out itsnotanoption.com. The prelim there would be you get a free book. You can claim your free book by going to itsnotanoption.com. You can also check out all of our offerings at marketrebellion.com/get started. That's marketrebellion.com/get started. We really appreciate all of you joining us. And I will be back with Pete. I'll be in Andorra, Spain, or technically a principality between Spain and France. I'll get into that tomorrow, but we'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time.